This is the Fragments page. You can use the Fragments page to edit any fragment that makes up your song. To edit fragments, you need a Gold tier license. If you are using the free Bronze tier, you can still use this page to view and play any fragment. The page has a top bar that contains the fragment controller buttons and fragment selection buttons. In the middle, you have the visualization view, where event information will be displayed. On the left you can see the representation of a keyboard, showing all 128 MIDI notes. Highlighted are the usual 88 keys of the full-size piano. There's also a highlight of the middle C key, which is MIDI note number 60. The octaves are also numbered. At the bottom of the page we have the fragment replace and variation editing buttons. With these, you can either edit fragment originals or their variations, as we will see further ahead. You can choose a fragment for editing either by double-clicking on a fragment in the structure view, or you can use these selector buttons to choose any fragment from the song. To tell Cydrea Music which fragment you want to edit, you first select a track from the track drop-down. Then, on the model drop-down, you can choose a model. The models shown are only those that are available in the track you selected. Remember that the concept, models, refers to the unique fragments that are associated with a specific track and will only play in that track. After selecting a model, Cydrea Music will show you the original of that model. The original is the fragment that was composed by Cydrea Music, without any variation applied. You can see and select any of its variations by clicking on the drop-down button. The original fragment cannot be used in a song. The original is used as reference and then transformed to obtain variations of it, that you can then use in a song. However, there is a variation operation that makes a copy of the original, like the example we see here. If, for any reason, the fragment's notes are outside the view, you can move the view up and down by clicking the mouse button while dragging it. To listen to the fragment you can use the dedicated fragment controller at the top. Click the play button. Use the stop button to stop fragment play at any time. As said before, this fragment is a variation. It's a transformation of a model that, in this context, we call original. Cydrea Music picks the model and either copies it, or applies a transformation to obtain a final version to be used in the song. In this specific case, the variation operation used was the direct copy of the original, as you can see described here next to the drop-down button. We can apply a different variation operation in order to obtain a somewhat different, but still relatable, fragment. There are two shortcut buttons that set or modify an octave change transformation. With these buttons you can quickly change the octave where the fragment's notes play. Let's increase an octave. You notice that all notes were transformed, one octave up, and the variation operation is described next to the variation button. If we select the original again, you can see that we still have the original notes. Only the variation 1 fragment was changed. Remember that making changes to the variations automatically changes the song. Let's listen. And, why not increase one more octave? You can add, change, or remove fragment variations at any time. To do that, you will use these three buttons. If you have an existing variation, but want to change some of its parameters, you will use the Edit button. We are editing the octave change transformation that we set earlier. Instead of using the shortcut buttons, you can apply a numeric value here. You can also change this variation by applying a different transformation. In the drop-up menu, we have the octave change operation that we have already seen. We can also apply a random offset transformation to a random group of notes. We can create double voices by duplicating notes with a given offset. Or we can create triple voices using the same principle. Finally, we can also apply a transformation to the velocity of the notes along the fragment using a ramp progression. If you want to remove all transformation and revert to a direct copy of the original, use the Original button. As you can see, all notes return to their original values, and the variation is again described as original. Let's try a different variation now. For instance, let's create a double voice variation. Cydrea Music creates new notes by copying the original ones, and then applying a given offset, that can also be negative. Let's make this fragment play in 2 consecutive octaves at the same time. In the cases where 2 notes become overlapped, they will be fused together as one. Let's hear the result. Sounds a bit fuller, but not that different. We can edit the transformation by setting 2 octaves up this time. Great! Let's clear this transformation and try another one. This time, we'll apply a random offset. Cydrea Music will randomly offset some of the notes in the fragment by a value within the absolute range of max delta. The random seed is just a number that you can set to start the random offset generator. Any integer is valid. You can see that the fragment has changed, but it's not immediately obvious that not all notes have been deviated. If you compare with the original, you can see the differences. Not every note gets changed. We can listen to the result. There are other transformations we can try. Let's try the velocity ramp. Cydrea Music will set a progressive velocity along the fragment that can increase or decrease according to the starting and ending velocity that you set. Let's start at 0 and end at top velocity. This is a good example to show you how Cydrea Music represents note velocity. The darker tones represent a low velocity, and the higher the velocity, the lighter the color is. Top velocity is shown as white. If you want to have information about a note, you can click it. Cydrea Music will play it, and will show information about it. Specifically, its MIDI value, and its velocity. If Cydrea Music plays a very long note, you can stop it by clicking the stop button from the fragment controller. You can verify the velocity progression by clicking on consecutive notes. Velocity is increasing. Let's listen to the result. Nice. As we've seen, the variation system is a quick way to create new fragments by applying a single transformation to the original fragment. But, you cannot change or remove individual notes in variations. Let's just reset this variation. You can, as a matter of fact, change the original. With the original, a different set of operations are available. We can completely replace the original, or make partial replacements. Or, we can pick a note. And then we can use the arrow keys on the computer's keyboard to change the note. If you want to change the note's velocity, you can use the plus and minus keys on the computer keyboard. If you want to remove the note, you just need to press the delete key. The changes you make to the original fragment will be automatically transferred to all its variations. Let's check it out by making some changes to the original. Now, let's switch to the variation 1. When the variation has a transformation, it will get the current contents of the original fragment, and then applies the transformation. Let's change something more to see it in action. As expected, your change was carried on to the variation and then the specified transformation, the octave change, was applied. Cydrea Music can also give you suggestions for new fragments. If you don't like this fragment's rhythm or its melody, you can request a suggestion for a different rhythm or melody. In that case, Cydrea Music will only change one aspect of the fragment. So, currently, we have this. If we want to, we can ask Cydrea Music to change the melody, keeping the rhythm. Now, we have a new fragment that has a new melody while keeping the rhythm mostly intact. Let's hear it. If you still don't like it, you can request a new suggestion. You can also change the rhythm of the fragment, but keeping the overall melody. It's the rhythm aspect of the fragment that dictates, not only the rhythm itself, but also note velocity. Let's listen. Now, remember that whatever you do to the original, it will be propagated to its variations. You can confirm that the original fragment you just created has been transformed according to the operation you set before. If you want Cydrea Music to give you a suggestion of a completely new fragment, you can use the Replace Fragment command. We now have a completely new fragment that does not resemble the previous rhythm or melody. If you have MIDI fragments created by yourself, or bought a library of fragments that you want to use in your songs, you can use the Import MIDI button. The fragment you import from an external file will replace the current fragment. There are several restrictions while importing. You cannot import complete songs. You can only import single-channel fragments that are no longer than 16 measures, or bars. If you have a MIDI keyboard or instrument, and want to record fragments using live input, on your own, Cydrea Music will let you do that through the Record button. You can use any bass fragment, as long as it's an original. Cydrea Music will not delete the existing notes. Instead, it will add the captured notes to the existing melody. As soon as you press the button, it will start recording. You notice that Cydrea Music played the existing notes while recording your input. The fragment now includes your recorded notes. This way you can compose in several passes, if you want. You can then edit or remove individual notes, according to your needs. This is the result.